I'm a student of the game. I feel like your titles from you just keeps getting elevated throughout the week. Chris, question for you. In your time with Bill Maher, was that a real joint he was smoking or a cigar of some type?
It was both. I think it was a cigarillo. But he was definitely partaking, which is what Club Random is about. I was actually in his funhouse at his house, which he's turned into this podcast studio, which is just going bonkers. He's really had a huge run in the digital space. Not surprised. But it was a lot of fun to be there.
Yeah, great conversation. We'll look for more of it. Good luck this weekend as well. 3 Americans live for tickets. Chris, good to see you. All right, we end this week together, friends. And by the rules of politics, Donald Trump has had a god-awful, lousy week. One of the worst weeks you can remember for a U.S. president. But for whatever reason, the rules of politics do not seem to apply to him. His standing with the American public is better than it has ever been. That is despite one of many bad stories, but we'll start with Signalgate, which news reports painted as the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency.
We begin tonight with a stunning breach in national security.
That inadvertently let a journalist in on a group text thread
about forthcoming attacks on Houthi rebel targets between March 11th and March 15th.
Somebody's going to have to pay for this because the story's not going anywhere. They're making Trump look weak.
But these people, they can't just admit they screwed up.
It is absolutely preposterous.
You've got Donald Trump saying, oh, it wasn't me. I don't know anything about this. Well, why should I know anything about this? I'm only the commander-in-chief.
Polls show Americans aren't happy with the scandal, but it is not hurting Donald Trump. And that's not the only bad thing that has happened this week, or even bad thing that would normally completely envelop a presidency. Monday, Signalgate was revealed. Tuesday, consumer confidence hits a 12-year low. Wednesday, Trump announced 25% tariffs on foreign-made vehicles, expected to raise car prices up to $12,000. Thursday, the administration cut 20,000 jobs at the Department of Health and Human Services. Today, the stock market took another significant beating. The Dow down 700 points. The S&P 500 on its track for its worst quarter in 3 years. Not to mention, this video came out of a college student being ripped away from campus by masked men. These are ICE agents. Any one of these things would normally derail and consume a presidency. That's not happening with Donald Trump. Despite all of these unflattering headlines and videos, Trump approval rating is up, and the number of Americans who believe the country is headed in the right direction, right track, wrong track, is the highest level since 2009. There you go. Trump and Obama together is bringing the country on the right track. The rules of politics just don't apply to Donald Trump. There's something about Trump the American people are responding to. And tonight, we can tell you we think we have found an answer. Not the answer, there's a few answers, but one big answer. Just watch Tim Walz, possible 2028 presidential candidate, failed 2024 VP candidate. This is what Americans are responding to and why they are trusting Donald Trump and liking Donald Trump despite the bad news, because Walz represents the alternative. Here he was talking about what his party needs to do to recover from 2024.
We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on DEI, and we let them define what woke is. We got ourselves in this mess because we weren't bold enough to stand up and say, you damn right we're proud of these policies. We're going to put them in, and we're going to execute them.
Trump won by stealing the Democratic agenda on working class issues. Tim Walz still does not understand that. Poll after poll shows working class voters aren't fans of DEI and wokeness. They hate it. Donald Trump has an awful lot of runway. Trump's agenda can derail in many ways. A Democratic Congress would flip everything on its head. We're going to show you that in a moment. But this weekend, when you're talking with your friends and family about Trump's first 66 days, You already know this because you watch the show, but remind them the rules of politics do not apply to Trump. For example, here he is on Air Force One ahead of a golf weekend in Florida. A reporter asked him about inflation.
We're landing right now.
Mr. President, do you plan to take Greenland by force?
Is today's inflation report impact? We're landing right now. I don't want to see anybody get hurt.
With us now, George Will, NewsNation senior political contributor, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist. Mr. Will, good to see you as always. When will the Washington political establishment and the media at all realize that the usual political rules do not apply to Donald Trump?
Soon or never. They'll see soon if they don't really apply to him, and we'll see what happens after that. What Mr. Trump is doing now is applying the Silicon Valley maxim that we've heard over and over again: move fast and break things. The country, in a sense, voted to break things. They say we don't like the status quo on immigration, on inflation, on trade, all the rest. Whether or not he's actually breaking things, Leland, remains to be seen, because everything he's done at the moment is either being challenged in court or about to be challenged in Congress, or both. So he's really in about the second inning of a 9-inning game here. So it's a little early to say who's going to learn what about this.
I will put you down as skeptical. That said, the issue of consumer confidence, what's happening with the stock market, does not seem to affect his popularity. I hypothesize that is because there are other things that he is doing much more culturally than economically that people like and makes them feel empowered, and somehow he is the revenge of their aggrieved senses.
He is, and always has been, Leland, a showman with an acute sense of his audience. And he knows that what the audience wants is action, and he's giving them action. He thinks the country voted for disruption, and he's giving them that. The question is, when the dust settles, will there be anything more but dust? Clearly, he is challenging the status quo, and that's exactly what they want.
That is what they want. A fascinating report just came out from Axios that the Trump administration is discussing a surprising option to help fulfill his campaign trail promises, allowing the richest Americans' tax rates to rise in return for cutting taxes on tips. Good trade?
Yes, it's subject to abuse, Leland, because all kinds of people, if there are no taxes on tips, they're going to get all kinds of work done, rechristened as tips. We'll see. Just the other day, Mr. Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, said Mr. Trump wants to abolish all taxes, not just the income tax, but all taxes on people earning less than $150,000. That would mean that only about 7% of the American people would pay taxes. Progressives are always saying we want the rich to pay their fair share. Mr. Trump, if he got that, would say the rich are going to pay everything. So we'll see about that. Again, that's a classic example of what Mr. Trump's promising, because it all depends on eventually the House Ways and Means and the Senate Finance Committee agreeing to it. Until that happens, it's a hypothetical.
Okay, so I think what you're saying is that he is able to defy all political rules, but not the reality and the Constitution, which says that so many of these things have to go through Congress that he wants to get done. Democrats remain fully incapable or unable to effectively counter him in any way. Jon Stewart was on with Ezra Klein, liberal journalist who you know from the New York Times, was explaining to Jon Stewart about the problems with the way Democrats have run governments, whether it be the federal government or state governments. He used as an illustration the Biden Inflation Reduction Act and what needed to be done to get some of the Inflation Reduction Act programs actually into practice. Take a listen.
We have to issue the notice of funding opportunity within 180 days. That's step one. Step 8 is states must submit an initial proposal. Step 12, states must run a competitive sub-granting process.
Oh my God. I'm speechless, Ezra. Honestly,
Leaving Jon Stewart speechless as Democrats explain democratic procedure or laws the Democrats put in place. It feels as though this, going back to what you said at the very beginning, is why Donald Trump has so much room to run and break things.
Because there is such pervasive disappointment with government, and the Democratic Party is, like it or not, identified as the party of government. Leland, remember when Barack Obama said we're going to do all these wonderful things because we're going to spend the money on shovel-ready projects? That is, would happen right away. A few years later, he said, guess what? There are no shovel-ready projects because people like me, progressives, have encompassed everything with rules and procedures and minority set-asides and environmental impact statements and all the rest. Remember, Leland, when in 2023, a Philadelphia portion of I-95 collapsed when a tanker truck exploded beneath it. If they had obeyed all the rules that the progressives had written about these projects, it would have taken 12 to 24 months just to let a contract. But Governor Shapiro, a progressive Democratic governor, said, away with them. We're going to disregard all laws and all regulations, and they got it done in about 15 days. That's a classic case. Or you could take the California high-speed rail, which is going nowhere after about $50 billion, and actually something like 20 years already. There's a whole series of books being published right now by mournful, lamenting progressives about why what they're doing isn't working. I'll tell you why. Because when Mr. Biden got all that money spent on charging stations, billions of charging stations for electric vehicles, and when he left office, they produced 7 charging stations.
7 charging stations in somewhere between 0 and none households connected to rural broadband for $42 billion. You're putting together a picture that Donald Trump has an awful lot of runway here. The highest number of people right now think the country is on the right track. 43% right now versus 27% before Trump took office. That number was even higher a little while ago. How much time does Donald Trump have now?
He has a lot of time until something really bad happens, such as a serious uptick in inflation. He's got full employment. He's got actually more than full employment. There are more empty jobs than there are unemployed people right now. He's got a lot of running room, and people are wishing him well, and they don't have a happy memory of his predecessor. But events happen, Leland. That's why we're in the news business, and news events happen, and most of them aren't good. There's an old saying in our business: we don't report the planes that land safely. So when bad things happen, we're going to report that, and bad things will happen. But so far, Mr. Trump has used his opening first act of his second play very effectively.
Yeah, well, Donald Trump would know things about things happening. There was that thing called COVID that happened and derailed the end of his first term. Mr. Will, good to see you as always, sir. Have a great weekend.
You too. See you soon, I hope.
The Make America Healthy Again movement is on a tear. West Virginia will now ban most artificial food dyes. But will Americans still think so if they have to pay $9 for a Snickers bar? The part of MAHA nobody wants to talk about.
But it takes a lot of courage to stand up to these companies the same way that it did to stand up to big tobacco.
Thanks for listening to NewsNation on the Go. I'm Connell McShane, and this is America's fastest growing cable news network, delivering fact-based, unbiased news from all sides.
They're going to come and say to me, sir, we're winning too much, sir. We can't take it anymore. We have to stop winning, sir. We can't do it. We're not used to winning in our country.
Donald Trump's fans are not tired of winning 66 days in. He is Teflon Don. They are ecstatic. We just did a huge segment about it. But there's reasons for Donald Trump's fans to be concerned, worried. Not necessarily about Trump, but about Republicans. And there is a difference. A Democratic Congress would flip everything on its head. A complete stop to Trump's legislative agenda, plus investigations into his administration. And that is increasingly possible. Not just a Democratic House after the midterm elections, but in the next few months. Republicans hold a very slim majority in the House, 218 to 213. But because of people being out right now and special elections, it's effectively a 1 or 2 seat majority. Special elections in Florida for former Representative turned National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, former Congressman Matt Gaetz' seats are already very, very close, way too close for comfort. Latest polling shows the Democratic candidate in Florida's 6th congressional district now closely trailing the Republican. It is within the margin of error. See that there is 4 points. This is a district Trump won by 30 points in 2024, just a few months ago. Then there's Wisconsin, where a race for one of the Supreme Court positions has become one of the most expensive contests in American history, with Elon Musk contributing in a major way.
Whether it's the Wisconsin Supreme Court race or these 2 congressional races, we got to hone in here. Florida is worth fighting for.
Elise is in a plus 21 Trump district, and so then to pull her back that you are concerned that she might lose says everything you need to know.
Wisconsin's important. Could be a tight race, could be a blowout.
Elon has made himself the main character of this race. It is what everyone is talking about.
With us now, Nina Turner, national co-chair of Bernie Sanders' 2020 campaign, Steve Cortez, senior campaign advisor to President Trump's 2020 campaign. Nice to see both of you. Steve, first to you. Donald Trump is extremely popular. We just did a whole segment on that. But if Trump is so popular, why are these races so close?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the answer is that there's a difference between Trump-motivated voters and the traditional Republican Party. What I mean by that is that Donald Trump has brought in lots of new voters into the political process. For example, he won Hispanic men nationwide. He won 18-year-olds nationwide, which is pretty shocking, frankly, to a lot of people. However, those new voters overwhelmingly view themselves as Trump supporters, as America First supporters, not necessarily, at least yet, as Republicans. And so when Trump is not on the ballot, it's difficult to motivate them to come out for a Supreme Court race in Wisconsin or for special elections in Florida. Now, I do think the Republicans are going to win both of those elections in Florida, but there is a definite serious divergence here that you pointed to in places where he won easily, running away by 30%. That the congressional candidate might win by, say, 5%. And it's part of this tension within the Republican Party as it becomes a thoroughly populist party. A lot of those folks rally to Trump, but they don't necessarily consider themselves Republicans.
All right, so Nina, to that point, that says especially the paycheck-to-paycheck voters, working-class voters are up for grabs, yet we don't see Democrats pivoting to that, right? We saw Tim Walz saying what we really need to do is double down on DEI and wokeness, all the things that alienated the voters that Steve just talked about.
Well, the Democrats definitely have to focus in on economics. It's always economics. And until the working class people, and I mean all, I hope you mean all too, Leland, when I'm talking about working class people across the ideology, racial, ethnic spectrum, until they are. I
don't know why you had to say that you hope I mean all. I said working class. That the paycheck-to-paycheck voters went to Donald Trump regardless of race. That wasn't the defining. We've said this for a long time, that we're a post-race.
I know, but sometimes I just want to clarify. Sometimes when people say working class, they only mean white males, but we're talking about all working class people. You did say all. The Democratic Party, until working class people are really in the clear, and they're still not in the clear, the economy is still going to be the main animating force. And I do agree with Steve in that there's a difference between President Trump and the GOP, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens both in these special elections, what happens in the midterm, and actually what happens when President Donald J. Trump is not on the ballot. If we go back in time with President Obama, we had that Obama appeal that did not, voters don't always transfer. And I can tell you that as somebody who served as an elected, you can't always get your voters to move over to somebody else, basically.
Yeah, look, it's a great point. You think about Barack Obama, incredible campaigner for himself, not for others. Same with Donald Trump. 2018 midterms, we saw what happened in the special elections in the Senate down in Georgia. 2021, the 2022 midterms, I could go on. But looking forward, and this is going to play a huge role because Elon Musk has taken over as almost a proxy at times for Donald Trump, as they are so closely linked. Here is Musk talking about how whether the Supreme Court choice in Wisconsin goes to a Republican or Democrat will decide how the congressional districts are drawn in Wisconsin. It's called gerrymandering. Here he is explaining it.
The Democrats are trying to redraw the districts in Wisconsin. We're trying to stop the Democrats from gerrymandering Wisconsin to remove 2 House seats. We could lose control of the House and all of the government reforms could be shut down.
I'm going to get you both on the same question, but I will start, Nina, with you ladies first. That could play as a TV commercial for either Republicans or Democrats.
That's right, Leland. That is exactly right. That's what happens when somebody has the pen. What we should be most concerned about, and all voters should be concerned about this, is whether or not somebody of that wealth, with dark money, 1 person, 10 people, should be able to pour that much money into a race to try to tilt the scale. So he's talking about somebody who has the pen. Well, he has the purse, and he is having an outsized impact on what the people of Wisconsin may or may not want. So we need dark money and big money donors out of politics. No matter if you make $2 or you make, almost a trillionaire, you should not be able to put your money on the scale and decide who wins in communities, especially communities you don't even live in.
Okay, but Nina, you know very well.
Go ahead.
You know very well that lots of big money is coming in, particularly from California, on behalf of the liberal candidate, Susan Crawford, in Wisconsin. So this is happening, obviously on both sides of the aisle. The point that Musk is making there, though, is very pertinent. And how do we know the Democrats are planning to steal the map drawing power away from the Wisconsin legislature? Well, because Hakeem Jeffries told us so. He said so on tape. He said, we are going to use the Wisconsin Supreme Court to overrule and abuse and remove the true constitutional power of the legislature there. We're going to redraw the maps to ones that we like. And the Democrats are openly campaigning that they believe they can pick up 2 seats through that nefarious operation. They're openly, brazenly campaigning on it.
See, we weren't talking about nefarious again. As Leland said, and I'm saying it, both parties play games with the maps when they have power. The bottom line is that I don't like outsized money in Democrat races or in Republican races. I think the American people, the everyday people who live in those respective communities, should be able to make a decision about who leads them without all of that influence. You think 1 person should be able to pour that kind of money into
Nina, Bernie Sanders accepts campaign contributions.
Leland, all elected officials accept campaign contributions. What I am saying is that dark money and people with lots of money should not be able to have more voice in a race. And I don't care if we're talking about Senator Bernie Sanders or Senator Nina Turner. The rules need to change in the United States of America when it comes to money and politics.
Okay, so Steve, at some point, is Elon spending enormous amounts of money? Yes, I know how much Democrats have spent. I know how much very wealthy Democrats have spent. I know how much Soros has spent. At some point, does Elon Musk become a liability for Republicans to be appearing as though they are just in the pocket of the world's richest man?
Look, I think there are some risks to that aspect that you're talking about there. For example, when you see the world's richest man aggressively cutting jobs, even though I think those government jobs are mostly wasteful and they do need to go, the optics of having Elon Musk as the face of the operation to cut those jobs, it can become problematic. Absolutely. I'll be the first to admit that. And we don't want to create our own Soros or our own Reed Hastings on the American right. Now, having said all that, I think Elon is doing amazing things for this country, and I think he's a patriot who is motivated by public service. But yes, there could be real problems with the optics there that I will concede.
And Nina is getting ready.
He's not a patriot at all.
Well, I thought we were going to get Friday afternoon agreement. Come on. Give me hope.
I mean, listen,
all right, you guys were great.
Give Steve the point that it could be a problem. I agree with Steve, and I think once Elon Musk is a problem, you're going to see President Donald J. Trump drop him like he hot, okay? That's going to happen.
All right. Hey, great having you both. Thank you very much. Enjoy the weekend. Big part of President Trump's agenda and why he won is the man on the right there, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Make America Healthy Again, the MAHA movement. Well, there's a part of the MAHA movement that nobody wants to talk about. It's the costs associated with healthy food. This morning, Robert F. Kennedy spoke in West Virginia. The governor there, Patrick Morrisey, just banned a number of the most popular dyes, food dyes, that come in all the food products we love.
The real battle is that we're getting sicker and sicker every year. And and it's really just a debate about who's going to pay for the treatment. Nobody has been focused on how do we get ourselves less sick. And it's like moving deck chairs around on the Titanic. No matter what you do.
Well, then again, we might all go bankrupt from buying healthy food, clean food. Host of MIT's data science podcast, Data Nation, Leland Vittert just wrote about this with our partners in The Hill. MAHA will make groceries unaffordable for many. And Liberty is with us now. Welcome back to the program. Explain this to us. Unaffordable for many because food prices are going to go up?
Well, so there's two aspects, right? First, absolutely food prices will go up. With banning these dyes and preservatives, they're going to need to use natural dyes and other types of preservatives. So the food prices by the big companies will certainly go up. But there's also the risk, especially when this is done state by state, that the food companies simply won't replace them because of the cost of doing these new types of foods without these dyes. And the problem is that the healthy alternatives are sometimes 9 to 10 times more expensive than the current food sold today.
All right, so we have some of these ideas. Nutri-Grain bars, $4.49 for 12 bars. Truvani bars, I've never heard of those, $41.99. Fruity Pebbles, $3.49. Magic Spoon fruit cereal, $14.91. Lay's potato chips, $2.50. Good Crisp Company crinkle potato chips, $11.42. I don't think it's a surprise that I haven't heard of any of the healthy alternatives. At some point, though, right, like the prices are going to come down when there's more people buying them, right?
Well, I mean, one would hope so, but that might be 5 years. That might be 10 years. Who knows how long that's going to be? The average, the lowest income American families spend $6,000 a year on groceries. Conservatively, their grocery costs for the year will double. What family can spend an extra $6,000 a year on groceries even for 1 year? 60% of Americans can't afford a $1,000 emergency. So, I mean, sure, maybe they'll come down eventually, but what are you supposed to do in a year? How are you supposed to feed your family?
So the pushback on this comes from, well, they do it in the United Kingdom, right? U.S. ingredients for Quaker oatmeal in the United States versus the UK. And it is a radical difference in the amount of stuff that sounds bad and you can't pronounce in the U.S. version of it. And yet UK families survive and aren't paying 5 times as much for Quaker oats.
First of all, they are paying more, not 5 times. That's true. But the regulations in Europe, this is total misnomer to say they banned everything in Europe. That's absolutely not true. They've banned one dye in Europe relative to the United States. So the legislation that's being passed and being pushed by many states goes 5 to 6 times further than the European regulations. So it's not the exact same thing in Europe versus the US that's being the story that's being told. Now, let me be clear. If we can do this, I think it's great. We all would prefer to have less artificial bad stuff in our food.
Right. No, that's fair. So much here that's so important. I got to get this last thing in. And you make a great point. By definition, this hurts paycheck to paycheck voters the most. Poor Americans oftentimes live in communities where you don't have grocery stores that even offer healthy foods. I'm going to give you the last 15 seconds on this. Is this a different debate than the debate of banning the use of food stamps, what are called SNAP benefits, to buy sugary sodas and candy and snack foods?
Absolutely, it's a different debate. And I mean, it's about what people can afford. And it's about families being able to afford to feed their children. This is totally separate than SNAP. I mean, you can make some parallels, but this is about American families feeding their kids.
Liberty, thank you very much. The data doesn't lie. Have a great weekend. We first wrote about this in War Notes. That's your chance for an inside look at the show every day. It is free. Warnotes.com to subscribe. I will see you on social media at Leland Vittert. You'll be smarter in all your discussions with friends when you read War Notes. The Tesla takedown movement plans more than 200 protests this weekend across America. Why the protests might be actually helping Donald Trump.
It's the people pushing the propaganda that caused that guy to do it. Those are the real villains here. And we're going to go after them.
You're listening to On Balance with Leland Vittert on NewsNation's audio stream. Available 24/7 on the NewsNation app, or just say, Alexa, play NewsNation.
The left finally figured out how to really really make America understand their displeasure with Donald Trump by burning Teslas and stealing prosciutto, brie, yogurt, or anything else from Whole Foods. So you heard that right. The billionaire heroes of the left, Elon Musk and Tesla, Jeff Bezos, because of Whole Foods, are now villains. A year ago, driving your Tesla to Whole Foods proved that you were virtuous. You were feeding your family clean, healthy food and driving an electric car. Now it is worthy of attack, literally. Yesterday, someone in Brooklyn carved a swastika into the door of a Cybertruck. It was caught on videos you can see from the cameras of the Cybertruck. So not only are these folks vandals, they're also idiots. As if to brand the person driving this car a Nazi, purely for driving a car made by Elon Musk. They probably bought the car long before the election. The NYPD is still looking for this crew of geniuses. Elon Musk had a lot to say about the protests and their cause when he was on Fox News this week.
The real problem is not the people. It's not like the crazy guy that firebombs a Tesla dealership. It's the people pushing the propaganda that caused that guy to do it. Those are the real villains here. And we're going to go after them. And the president's made it clear we're going to go after them.
This weekend, anti-Elon groups plan protests at hundreds of Tesla dealerships across the country, protesting American-made cars. That will certainly help Democrats win back working-class voters and making the stock price of Tesla go down. That will help everyone's 401k. The Tesla protests have backfired because Americans are inherently fair. Burning people's cars, carving swastikas into them, offends most people, even if they don't like Trump and Musk. It's no different than when Biden's Department of Justice went after Trump. But there is more now. Business Insider reports shoplifters are taking food from Whole Foods to express their displeasure with Jeff Bezos. Bezos has become more Trump-friendly and has also moved the Washington Post to be more Trump-friendly. So the shoplifters say they are apparently liberating items from Lex Luthor Jeff Bezos. They quote a shoplifter who says Bezos just is profiting, taking so much advantage of the little people. So if we as little people can bite back, again, a direct quote, bite back a little bit, and that's me taking $100 maybe out of revenue for him, that's a little bit of a middle finger. Well, never mind that, like every other businessman, Bezos is going to raise prices to account for shoplifting. So really, it's a middle finger to all of us who just abide by the law. Again, why these protests are backfiring. But I digress. Now, those that shop at Whole Foods are going to pay more for their oat milk so that you can somehow stick it to the man. One thing that has never been accounted for in politics is luck. And nothing continues to help Donald Trump more than those oppose him being stupid. It will continue this weekend. The vice president visited Greenland today and proceeded to, well, kind of sort of insult Greenland. Has J.D. Vance ever actually figured out the art of the deal?
Sit down and eat. Sit down and eat. Don't let the vice president stop you guys from getting your chow here. How we doing? It's cold as here. Nobody told me.
President Trump has made it clear again today that the United States having a stake in Greenland is essential for world peace. It's a good graphic up there. So he sent his highest-ranking envoy to the island to begin surveying what could be ours. Hashing out a deal, if you were. And you can judge for yourself how J.D. Vance's trip went.
How we doing? It's cold as here. Nobody told me.
Denmark has not kept pace in devoting the resources necessary to keep this base, to keep our troops, and in my view, to keep the people of Greenland safe from a lot of very aggressive incursions from Russia, from China, and from other nations.
Vance's Greenland trip highlights a couple of things, none of them necessarily good for the VP. President Trump seems to sort of view him as an errand boy. Then again, that's always the VP's job. Trump wants him to play his attack dog, and Vance's portfolios are most of the administration's unpopular issues. Jewish Insider wrote a scathing piece after some of Vance's text messages leaked out this week. Quote, Vance's reluctance to support Houthi strikes concerns some leading GOP senators. A number of Republican senators are very concerned about his foreign policy views. Quote, they think it's quite reveals a mindset that I'm sure is perplexing to our European allies. Then we look at Vance's poll numbers, lowest favorability rating of any new vice president since polling began. 41% approve, 47% disapprove. With us now, Hogan Gidley, former White House Deputy Press Secretary, Trump 1.0, Vice Chair for the Center of Election Integrity. Hogan, good to see you, my friend. Thank you. J.D. Vance getting a raw deal?
From the media?
Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, of course from the media, but everyone in Trump world gets a raw deal when it comes to the media and their coverage of this White House and this administration. It's pretty clear. I would probably take issue with some of the characterizations of J.D. Vance as the vice president, although the vice president's role obviously has been much maligned over the years. As Mike Huckabee used to say, it's the job no one wants, but the job no one would turn down. But J.D. Vance has been a good, loyal, and faithful soldier at this point, going out and doing the things Donald Trump wants him to do. And, of course, he's on the offense, but so is Donald Trump. He has talked about Greenland for a long time. He wants the world to know he's serious about the strategic nation, what it could offer. So he sent his number 2 there to have that conversation as well.
Okay, so I think it's interesting because he's showing up in Greenland and trying to ingratiate himself to Greenlanders. Couldn't even go to the capital of Greenland because they were worried about protests, so he shows up at the U.S. Air Force Base. And I kind of envision this. I'm thinking about this from the art of the deal that I've read. You have to understand Donald Trump. He's an incredibly charismatic and gracious guy. He would show up to Greenland, Donald Trump would, and say, oh, my God, this is the most beautiful place on earth. Everyone says it's cold here. I think this is fabulous. And then you have Vance come up and say it's cold as bleep.
Okay. I mean, look, it is cold there, I'm sure. He was trying to ingratiate himself there with humor. Yeah. Listen, no one can be Donald Trump but Donald Trump. He wrote The Art of the Deal. He practices The Art of the Deal. He has made America great because of The Art of the Deal. J.D. Vance is not Donald Trump, but they are in lockstep on all of these issues, and today was another example of that.
Okay, so if they're in lockstep, why does Donald Trump seem at every point to cut his legs out a little bit from under him? Here is Donald Trump with Bret Baier. Take a listen.
Do you view Vice President J.D. Vance as your successor, the Republican nominee in 2028?
No, but he's very capable. I mean, I don't think that I think you have a lot of very capable people. So far, I think he's doing a fantastic job. It's too early. We're just starting.
Is it that Trump doesn't like being overshadowed? Here you do. You have a guy who you picked to be your vice president. He's 40 years old, probably the most successful young politician since Obama, maybe since Kennedy, especially considering where he came from in his background. And yet Trump seems to, at every moment, just kind of not quite give him his due.
No. He absolutely gives him his due. He's the sitting vice president of the United States. What Bret Baier was talking about is he the one who's going to be the next president? And Trump says, ho, we got 4 years for the American people to decide. Donald Trump, unlike Republicans in the past or Democrats in the past, actually care about what the American people think. He's not going to try and push some candidate onto them from his bully pulpit from the White House. He says, you guys get to decide this. And as he said in that clip, Donald Trump was clear. There are plenty of capable candidates out there. But there is no doubt that J.D. Vance clearly has some institutional knowledge now, having been vice president for just a short period of time. But by the time the election rolls around, he will have been there for 4 years and will understand the entire landscape. Of course, that will be an advantage for him should he decide to run.
Well, Hogan, there's a reason you are so good at your job as a spokesperson. I'm always reminded of that when you come on. It is good to see you, my friend. Have a great weekend. Thank you very much. One thing you will be talking about tomorrow and the rest of the weekend when we come back. Thanks for listening to News Nation on the Go. I'm Leland Vittert. This is America's fastest growing cable news network, delivering fact-based, unbiased news from all sides. Welcome back. Big announcement coming for you all on Monday. Been working on something for a while. It's going to be really exciting to share with you. Subscribe to War Notes, warnotes.com to be part of it. We'll also see you on social media at Leland Vittert. Here's Ashley.